The endless void of space held many secrets. For centuries, humanity had gazed at the stars, wondering if they were alone. They weren't. The radiant Imperium had conquered over 3,000 star systems across the galaxy. Their massive ships roamed the darkness between stars, bringing new worlds under their control with ruthless efficiency. They had a simple approach to expansion: find, assess, conquer. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, staring at the holographic display of a small blue planet. "So this is the new target," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "Status report." A junior officer stepped forward. "Planet designation Sol 3, sir. Local inhabitants call it Earth. Technology level is pre-interstellar. They have basic space exploration capabilities, but haven't ventured beyond their own moon." Voss smiled. Easy conquests meant quick promotions. After 50 years of service to the Imperium, he was just one successful campaign away from joining the Imperial High Command. "Deploy the probes. Standard observation protocol. I want a full assessment in 48 hours. "Yes, Admiral." The probes were launched, small metallic spheres that could easily avoid Earth's primitive detection systems, or so they thought. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, in a facility unknown to most of humanity, alarm systems blared. Dr. James Miller rushed into the control room of the Deep Space Monitoring Initiative. "Talk to me, people. What are we seeing?" he demanded. A technician looked up from her screen, face pale. "Multiple objects entering orbit, sir. They're small, but they're maneuvering with precision no human craft could match." "Are they transmitting?" "Yes, sir. Encrypted signals directed toward the outer solar system." Miller removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. For 15 years, he and his team had watched the skies, waiting for this day. They had picked up distant signals, evidence of faster-than-light travel, and signs of a vast civilization expanding across the stars. Now that civilization had found Earth. "Activate Protocol Watchman," Miller ordered, "and get me the Security Council. All members. This is not a drill." Within hours, 12 of the most powerful people on Earth gathered in a secure virtual meeting. The President of the United States, the Premier of China, the Russian President, and other world leaders listened in stunned silence as Miller presented his evidence. "These objects are alien probes," Miller explained, showing enhanced images on their screens. "They're mapping our planet, scanning our communications, and assessing our technological capabilities." "Why weren't we informed of this possibility earlier?" demanded the British Prime Minister. "Because we needed to be certain," Miller replied, "and because panic would not help us prepare." The Chinese premier leaned forward. "What do they want?" "Based on the signals we've intercepted over the years, they represent an expansionist empire. They don't ask permission to take worlds. They simply take them." Silence fell over the meeting. "What can we do?" asked the Indian Prime Minister, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Miller took a deep breath. "More than they think. After the first signals were detected years ago, certain technologies were developed in secret, technologies that could help us." "What technologies?" the Russian president asked sharply. "That information is compartmentalized for security reasons," Miller answered. "But what you need to know is that we have options. We're not defenseless." The American president spoke for the first time. "You're telling us Earth has weapons these aliens don't know about?" Miller smiled slightly. "I'm telling you that humanity has been preparing for this day for longer than you realize. We need unified action now. No public announcements, no panic, just quiet preparation." One by one, the world leaders nodded. "Then we're agreed," said the Secretary General of the United Nations. "Operation Guardian begins immediately." As the meeting ended, Miller looked at the satellite images of the alien probes. They thought Earth was weak and unprepared. They would soon learn how wrong they were. In the darkness of space, the first probes completed their scans and returned to the waiting Imperial fleet. The invasion of Earth was about to begin. Commander Turan watched from the bridge of the scout vessel Pathfinder as the blue-green planet grew larger on the main display. His ship, along with 5 others, formed the advance force of the Radiant Imperium's 37th Expansion Fleet. Magnificent, isn't it? He remarked to his second-in-command, Officer Laris. Just another backwater world, sir, Laris replied without enthusiasm. Primitive technology, fragmented political structure, standard conquest scenario. Tyran nodded but continued to study Earth with interest. Something about this world seemed different, though he couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was the unusual amount of electromagnetic chatter filling space around the planet. Evidence of a species just discovering the basics of electronic communication. Begin full spectrum analysis, Tyran ordered. I want detailed reports on their weapon systems, energy production, and communications networks. The scout ships spread out through the solar system, careful to remain beyond the detection range of Earth's rudimentary satellites. They launched dozens of stealth drones that slipped past orbital defenses and began mapping cities, military installations, and infrastructure. Their most advanced weapons use chemical propellants and limited nuclear fission, reported the science officer after several hours of observation. No energy shields, no antimatter technology, no faster-than-light capability. Tyran frowned. And their space presence? Minimal. A small orbital station, a few satellites, and primitive rockets. They've only reached their own moon. And that was decades ago. Unusual, Tyran muttered. Most species push outward continuously once they achieve spaceflight. Perhaps they're just unambitious, Laris suggested with a shrug. Tyran wasn't convinced. Continue monitoring. I want a complete assessment before reporting to Admiral Voss. Back on Earth, in a hidden facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Colonel Anna Reed watched real-time tracking data of the alien vessels. Her team of 20 specialists represented the best military minds from a dozen nations. They're scanning everything, said Major Thomas, her tactical officer. Military bases, power plants, communication networks. Reed nodded grimly. They're looking for targets, sizing us up. The room was filled with advanced technology that shouldn't exist by Earth's public standards. Quantum computers, holographic displays, and energy readings from systems powered by something beyond nuclear fission. Project Sentinel status, Reed asked. A young lieutenant looked up from her station. All systems green, Colonel. The prototype is ready for deployment. And Dr. Miller's team. They've activated the deep space communication jammers. The alien fleet can still communicate internally, but their transmissions to their home base are now being intercepted and altered. Reed allowed herself a small smile. Let the aliens think they were seeing everything. Let them believe Earth was defenseless. On the Pathfinder, Commander Tyran prepared his report for Admiral Voss. The massive Imperial flagship, Dominion, waited at the edge of the solar system, along with 200 warships. Your assessment, Commander, Voss demanded over the secure channel. Earth represents a Type 0.8 civilization. Admiral, Tyran reported. Pre-interstellar, with limited space capabilities. Their military technology is based primarily on ballistic weapons and nuclear devices. They have no unified planetary government, but rather approximately 200 separate nation-states of varying power. Voss looked pleased. Resistance potential. Minimal to moderate. They could damage some landing craft with their nuclear weapons, but our shields would prevent significant losses. I recommend standard subjugation protocols. Very good. Prepare for Phase 2. The Dominion will arrive in 3 standard days. As the transmission ended, Tyran couldn't shake his feeling of unease. Something about this planet didn't fit the pattern he'd seen in dozens of other conquests. Unknown to the Imperial forces, Colonel Reed and her team were boarding a vessel hidden in an underwater base. The ship, called Emissary, represented humanity's best-kept secret. a spacecraft filled with technology recovered from ancient ruins found beneath the Antarctic ice decades ago. All personnel secured, reported Major Thomas. Ready for launch. Reed took her position in the command chair. Project Sentinel is now active. Humanity will not fall without a fight. As the emissary prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere, the alien scout fleet continued their observations, completely unaware that they were being watched far more closely than they were watching. The Imperial advance ships entered Earth's orbit with confidence. Their massive hulls gleamed in the sunlight as they positioned themselves over major cities. Commander Tiran stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching Earth's blue expanse spread below. "Begin the standard announcement broadcast," he ordered. "All frequencies, all languages we've been able to decode." Officer Laris nodded. "Transmitting now, sir." Across Earth, communication systems were suddenly flooded with the same message, translated into dozens of languages. "People of Earth, your planet is now under the protection of the Radiant Imperium. Resistance is unnecessary and will result in harm. Surrender your governing authority, and you will be treated fairly as Imperial subjects. You have one planetary rotation to comply." In government buildings worldwide, leaders watched the message with grim faces but remained calm. They had been prepared for this moment. "They're right on schedule," Dr. Miller said, standing in the White House Situation Room. "Colonel Reed's team is in position." The president nodded. "Then we proceed as planned." High above Earth, Commander Tiran was surprised when his communication officer reported, "Sir, we're detecting a spacecraft launching from Earth." "Impossible," Laris said. "Our scans showed no vessels capable of reaching orbit." Yet there it was on their screens, a sleek silver craft rising through the atmosphere. It was unlike any Earth vessel they had observed. No visible propulsion system, no exhaust, no rockets. It simply rose, defying gravity with impossible ease. "Scan it," Tiran ordered, his unease growing. "Sir, our sensors can't penetrate its hull," the science officer reported with confusion. "The material is unknown to our database." The Earth vessel took up position before the Imperial fleet. It was small, perhaps large enough for only a dozen humans, but its presence was unsettling. It had no visible weapons, no obvious defenses. "We are receiving a transmission from the vessel," the communications officer announced. "Audio only, directed specifically to us." "Let's hear it," Tiran said. A clear, firm voice filled the bridge. "This is Colonel Anna Reed of Earth. Your presence here is unwelcome. Leave now. We have remained hidden by choice, not necessity." The Imperial officers exchanged glances. This wasn't the terrified pleading or angry defiance they typically encountered during first contact situations. Tiran leaned forward. "This is Commander Tiran of the Radiant Imperium. Your primitive world has been selected for incorporation into our civilization. Surrender now and—" "You misunderstand," Reed interrupted. "This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. The only one you will receive." Tiran's patience ended. "Capture that vessel," he ordered. Tractor beams and boarding parties. 3 Imperial ships moved to surround the emissary. They activated their tractor beams, golden energy reaching out to ensnare the Earth vessel. What happened next stunned the Imperial crew. The tractor beams simply passed through the emissary as if it weren't there. When the beams should have connected, they found no purchase. "Sir, the tractor beams aren't working," the weapons officer reported. "It's like trying to grab smoke." "Launch fighters," Tiran ordered, his voice tight with frustration. Small attack craft poured from the Imperial ships, surrounding the emissary. They fired warning shots, energy weapons flashing. The Earth vessel didn't move or return fire. Instead, a pulse of blue light expanded outward from it. When the pulse passed through the Imperial fighters, their systems went dark. 30 attack craft drifted helplessly in space, disabled but undamaged. "What just happened?" Laris demanded. Before anyone could answer, the Earth vessel simply vanished. "Where did it go?" Tiran shouted. Unknown, sir. No warp signature, no jump point formed. It just disappeared. A small object remained where the emissary had been, a sphere about the size of a human fist, rotating slowly. We're receiving a data transmission from that object, the communications officer said. It's enormous. Terabytes of information. Tyran stared at the small sphere on the screen. Retrieve it. Carefully. As the sphere was brought aboard, Tyran knew one thing with certainty. He needed to contact Admiral Voss immediately. The assessment of Earth had been catastrophically wrong, and the Imperium was about to make a terrible mistake. Admiral Voss's face darkened as he listened to Commander Tyran's report. The massive viewscreen on the Dominion's bridge displayed Tyran's concerned expression alongside footage of the Earth vessel vanishing and the disabled fighters drifting in space. "You're telling me," Voss said slowly, "that a single ship from this primitive planet disabled 30 of our fighters without firing a shot, then disappeared?" "Yes, Admiral," Tyran replied. "And there's more. The data sphere they left behind contains troubling information." "Explain." Tyran hesitated. "It shows technologies far beyond what we observed on their planet. Energy systems we've never encountered, weapons that could." He paused. "Admiral, if these schematics are genuine, they could destroy half our fleet with a single strike." Admiral Voss laughed sharply. "Obvious forgeries. A desperate bluff from a frightened species." "Our science division doesn't think so," Tyran countered. "The quantum signatures in the data can't be faked with known technology. Chief Scientist Mura believes the schematics are authentic." As if summoned by her name, the door to the bridge slid open, and Chief Scientist Mura entered. A tall woman with striking features and intelligence in her eyes, she approached Admiral Voss with barely concealed urgency. "Admiral, I've completed my analysis of the Earth data package," she said. "These humans possess technology that defies our understanding of physics. Their power generation methods alone—" "Enough," Voss interrupted. "I won't have my invasion plan derailed by tricks and illusions. This planet is divided into hundreds of nations. Our scouts observed their primitive weapons. They can barely reach their own moon." "But sir," Mara insisted, "what if that's deliberate? What if they've been hiding their true capabilities?" Voss turned away dismissively. "Prepare the invasion fleet. We attack in 12 hours. After Voss left, Mara approached Commander Tyran. "He's making a terrible mistake," she whispered. "I know," Tyran replied quietly. "But our orders are clear." Back on Earth, in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, world leaders gathered to assess the situation. The room hummed with activity as military personnel from dozens of countries worked side by side. "Colonel Reed's mission was successful," Dr. Miller reported. "The Imperial fleet received our warning and the data package." "Will they heed it?" asked the Chinese premier. Miller shook his head. "Unlikely. Their commander seems determined to proceed." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Then we have no choice," the American president said. "Activate all systems. It's time to reveal what humanity can really do." Dr. Miller nodded gravely. "I'll need authorization from all Security Council members." One by one, the world leaders pressed their palms against identification panels. As the final authorization was given, Dr. Miller entered a complex code into his terminal. "Activating Global Defense Network," he announced. Around the world, hidden facilities awakened. Beneath the Pacific Ocean, massive doors opened in the seafloor. In the Antarctic ice, ancient machinery hummed to life. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, a structure that had been mistaken for a mountain began to transform. "How much should we tell the public?" asked the Indian Prime Minister. "Everything," Miller replied. "It's time humanity knew the truth." Worldwide broadcasts interrupted regular programming. Dr. Miller addressed billions of stunned viewers. "Citizens of Earth, what I'm about to tell you will change your understanding of human history forever. We are not alone in the universe, and we have never been. Our ancestors once traveled among the stars before choosing isolation. The technology they left behind has been kept secret, guarded by a select few through generations. Today, that secrecy ends as we face an existential threat. As Miller spoke, people around the world watched in awe as massive structures emerged from hiding places, advanced defense systems that had been concealed for centuries. On the Dominion, Admiral Voss watched his invasion fleet assemble, unaware that Earth was awakening technologies that had remained dormant for thousands of years. Commander Tehran studied the blue planet on his screen, a sense of dread building within him. Chief Scientist Mara stood beside him, her expression grim. "We should have listened to their warning," she said softly. Tehran nodded. "I fear we're about to learn why." Admiral Voss stood triumphantly on the command deck of the Dominion as 200 Imperial warships moved into attack formation around Earth. The massive viewscreen showed the blue planet, seemingly peaceful and unaware of its impending conquest. "Final systems check," Voss ordered. "Prepare invasion transports." Status reports flooded in from across the fleet. Weapons charge. Shields at maximum. Troop carriers ready. Everything proceeded according to standard conquest protocols. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the planet." Voss barely glanced in that direction. "Specify." "Unknown, sir. It's like nothing in our database." Before Voss could respond, a shimmering blue light began to spread across Earth's surface. It started at the poles and moved quickly toward the equator, enveloping the entire planet in a glowing shield. "What is that?" Voss demanded, now giving the phenomenon his full attention. Chief Scientist Mara rushed to her instruments. "It appears to be an energy field of some kind, Admiral. But the power required to generate something on a planetary scale would be..." She paused, checking her readings again. "Impossible." Commander Tehran watched the blue shield with growing concern. "Admiral, I recommend we delay the attack until we understand what we're seeing." "Nonsense," Voss snapped. "It's clearly a desperate defense mechanism, probably draining their entire planetary resources." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their largest military installations. Fire warning shots." 5 Imperial destroyers moved forward, their main cannons charging with brilliant red energy. When they fired, massive energy beams streaked toward Earth. What happened next stunned everyone on the Dominion's bridge. As the beams struck the blue shield, they didn't explode or dissipate as expected. Instead, the shield absorbed the energy completely, glowing brighter where the beams made contact. Then, to the horror of the Imperial officers, the shield redirected the energy with perfect precision back to the ships that had fired, not as an attack, but as a demonstration. The returned energy passed harmlessly just above each destroyer. "Impossible," whispered Voss. A transmission from Earth broke the stunned silence. Colonel Reed's voice filled the bridge. "Final warning. We have lived in peace because we choose peace." Voss slammed his fist on the command console. "All ships, launch ground troops. Their shield might stop energy weapons, but it can't stop physical objects." Transport ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, carrying thousands of Imperial soldiers. As they approached the blue shield, the ships slowed, then stopped completely, unable to penetrate the barrier. "The transports can't get through," reported a tactical officer. "It's like they're hitting a solid wall." "Increase power," Voss shouted. The transport ships pushed their engines to maximum, but none could break through the shield. Some began to overheat from the effort and were forced to retreat. On Earth, in the Global Command Center, Dr. Miller monitored the shield's performance. Surrounding him, military leaders and scientists from around the world watched in wonder as the ancient defense system performed flawlessly. "Shield integrity at 100%, reported a technician. "Power consumption is minimal." Miller nodded. "They're testing our defenses, not launching a full attack yet." Colonel Reed, who had returned from her mission, stood beside Miller. "They still don't understand what they're facing." "They will soon," Miller replied. Admiral Voss seems like the type who needs a more forceful demonstration. As if on cue, the Imperial fleet began repositioning. Dozens of warships formed a line, preparing for a coordinated assault. In the Dominion's tactical room, Voss outlined his plan to his officers. We will fire all weapons simultaneously. No shield can absorb that much energy at once. Commander Tyran stepped forward. Admiral, I must formally object. The data package warned us. I don't care about their warnings or tricks. Voss shouted. This is a primitive world, and I will not be the first Imperial commander to retreat from primitives. On Earth, Miller watched the Imperial fleet's movements on the holographic display. They're preparing for a full assault, he said calmly. Should we strike first? Asked the Russian general. Miller shook his head. No, we will show them the difference between having power and using it wisely. As the Imperial fleet prepared to fire, Earth waited patiently behind its shield, ready to deliver the lesson humanity had learned long ago. True strength lies not in conquest, but in restraint. All ships, fire! Admiral Voss roared, his face contorted with rage. 200 Imperial warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. The void of space lit up with blinding energy as planet-killer cannons, fusion missiles, and quantum disruptors, enough firepower to reduce a world to ash, streaked toward Earth. The blue shield around the planet brightened as the barrage approached. For a moment, it seemed to flicker under the assault. The shield is failing, Voss exclaimed, leaning forward eagerly. But he was wrong. The shield didn't fail, it transformed. The blue energy absorbed every weapon's impact, growing brighter until it was painful to look at directly. Then, with methodical precision, it redirected the energy. Not back at the ships that had fired, but at specific points in space around the fleet. Half the Imperial vessels suddenly found themselves without power, weapons, or shields, disabled but not destroyed, their crews unharmed but helpless. Impossible, Voss whispered, watching as 100 of his mighty warships drifted powerless in space. Commander Tyran stepped forward. Admiral, we must withdraw the remaining ships before. No, Voss shouted. This is some trick, some illusion. Chief Scientist Mara checked her instruments with trembling hands. It's no illusion, Admiral. They've disabled half our fleet without killing a single Imperial citizen. On Earth, Dr. Miller stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Every nation had a representative present, and billions watched the broadcast worldwide. The time had come for humanity to learn the truth. People of Earth, Miller began, his voice steady. What I'm about to tell you has been kept secret for generations. Our history as taught in schools is incomplete. He activated a holographic display showing ancient star maps. 12,000 years ago, humanity wasn't confined to Earth. We were a spacefaring civilization with colonies across dozens of star systems. Gasps and murmurs spread through the assembly. We called ourselves the Guardians, and we were among the most advanced species in this arm of the galaxy. But we were also warriors, conquerors. Our technology gave us the power to subjugate other worlds. And for a time we did. The hologram showed scenes of ancient space battles, massive ships similar yet different from the Imperial vessels now threatening Earth. But we witnessed the consequences of empire, war, suffering, the corruption of power. And so our ancestors made a choice that no other species had made before. They retreated. They abandoned their empire and returned to Earth, bringing their most advanced technology with them. Miller paused, looking across the silent assembly. They established the Watchers, a secret organization tasked with hiding and preserving our advanced technology, while allowing humanity to develop naturally, to learn wisdom before reclaiming power. For thousands of years, a select few have guarded these secrets, intervening only when necessary to prevent our discovery. In space, the remaining Imperial ships attempted to retreat, but found themselves held in place by an invisible force. A communication channel opened on all Imperial vessels. Colonel Reed's face appeared on their screens. Your ships are disabled but intact. Your crews are unharmed. This was our choice, not our limitation. On the Dominion, Voss stared at Reed's image with hatred. "Who are you people?" he demanded. "We are humanity," Reed replied simply. "Once, we were like you, conquerors who measured greatness by the worlds we controlled. We learned better." Back at the United Nations, Miller continued his revelation. The ancient technology has been hidden in secret facilities around the world, beneath the oceans, inside mountains, under ice caps. Generations of watchers have maintained these systems, improved them, and kept them ready for a day we hope would never come. He gestured to a group of individuals sitting quietly in the front row, men and women of various ethnicities and ages. These are the current watchers, people who have dedicated their lives to protecting humanity from the shadows. Today, they step into the light. An elderly woman among them stood and addressed the assembly. "We never wanted to reveal ourselves this way," she said. "We hoped humanity would rediscover its past when it had learned the wisdom to use its power responsibly. But the Imperium forced our hand." In space, Commander Turan watched in awe as more ancient Earth vessels emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, from beneath the lunar surface, from Mars, from the asteroid belt. The truth became undeniable. Earth had never been defenseless. It had been waiting. Admiral Voss stood rigidly on the bridge of the Dominion, his uniform disheveled, his authority crumbling. Around him, Imperial officers exchanged worried glances. Half their fleet floated powerless in space, and the other half remained frozen in place by forces they couldn't comprehend. "Admiral," Commander Turan said firmly, "we must accept their terms." "Never," Voss hissed. "I will not surrender to primitives." Chief Scientist Mara stepped forward. "They are not primitives, Admiral. They never were." She turned to the other officers. "The evidence is undeniable. Their technology exceeds our own. Continuing this conflict will only result in our destruction." The senior officers nodded in agreement. The ship's security chief approached Voss from behind. "Admiral Voss," he announced, "under Imperial Code Section 12, you are relieved of command for endangering Imperial forces through reckless action." Before Voss could react, 2 guards took position on either side of him. His face flushed with rage and humiliation as he was escorted from the bridge. Commander Turan took a deep breath and sat in the command chair. "Open a channel to Earth. Tell them we wish to talk." On Earth, the process of global revelation continued. In city squares, people gathered around screens watching as Dr. Miller explained humanity's secret history. In homes around the world, families sat in stunned silence as they learned that humans had once traveled between stars. In the United Nations Command Center, Colonel Reed received the Imperial transmission. "They want to talk," she told Dr. Miller. "Voss has been removed from command." Miller nodded. "Arrange a meeting. It's time we rejoin the galactic community, on our terms." 3 days later, a historic meeting took place on neutral ground, a space station that Earth had secretly maintained in orbit around Jupiter. Commander Turan led a small delegation of Imperial representatives, while Earth sent Colonel Reed, Dr. Miller, and 5 world leaders. The Imperial delegates couldn't hide their amazement as they toured the station, seeing technology centuries beyond what they had believed Earth possessed. "This station has been here for how long?" Turan asked in disbelief. 400 years, Miller replied. "One of many outposts our ancestors maintained throughout the solar system." In the main conference room, both parties gathered around a large table. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. "The radiant Imperium has existed for 2,000 years, Turan began. "In that time, we have never encountered a species that concealed its true capabilities as yours has done." "We had good reasons," Reed replied. "Our ancestors saw what power did to them, how it corrupted, how it led to suffering. They chose isolation and reflection over dominance." Turan nodded slowly. "A choice our people never considered." The Earth representatives presented their terms. The Imperium would recognize Earth and the entire solar system as sovereign territory. A limited cultural and scientific exchange would begin, but Earth would control what technologies it shared. Some of what we possess could be dangerous in the wrong hands, Miller explained. Not because we don't trust you, but because we've seen the consequences of unchecked technological expansion. Tyran considered this. The Imperial High Command will not be pleased with these terms. They should be grateful, said the American president. We could have destroyed your fleet. Instead, we chose restraint. That itself is educational, Tyran admitted. 1 week later, the agreement was formalized. The disabled Imperial ships were restored to working order and allowed to depart. Commander Tyran, now promoted to admiral, remained behind as the first Imperial ambassador to Earth. As the Imperial fleet departed, humanity began its careful reemergence onto the galactic stage. Colonel Reed was appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the wider galaxy, leading the small team aboard the emissary. Dr. Miller returned to his laboratory, where he began the process of gradually introducing advanced technologies to the world's scientific community. In a garden outside the new Galactic Relations Center in Geneva, Miller sat with Tyran, watching the sunset. Your people have taught mine a valuable lesson, Tyran said quietly. Power is not the same as wisdom. Miller smiled. And your arrival has reminded us of something important too. What's that? That isolation, no matter how noble the intention, is not the answer. Engagement is harder, riskier, but ultimately better. As night fell on Earth, lights came on in cities across the planet. But now, for the first time in thousands of years, humanity also looked to the stars not with wonder about what might be out there, but with knowledge of its place among them. A new chapter had begun, not just for Earth, but for the galaxy itself.